I think in all these issues, the most important thing is not to worry about what they're saying. I'm not worried about what they're saying. I'm worried about what you're doing. In other words, we can, if Hasbara, which comes from the Hebrew word is Lazarus, we're never going to win this. Because all we're doing is explaining, explaining, explaining. I want to replace it with the Hebrew word hatkafa, which is to attack. If we set the agenda, we're not going to keep worrying about what they're doing. It's much, much more important to keep a proactive agenda, making them accountable for acts of terrorism, making them accountable for saying that they said we don't want peace negotiations, we want terrorism, and to keep them running.
Just wanted to ask, in South Africa we seem to have a unique situation where because of our unique history and a struggle against apartheid, the Muslim community has been very able to draw the connection between the ANC and the PLO and say that Arafat and Mandela are very similar. We've got ministers in the South African government, Jewish ministers, who've openly come out in support of the Palestinians, and we're finding it very hard to break this connection and to put out positive messages about Israel that appeal to the majority of the citizens of South Africa, taking into account our unique history. And that's my question to Neil Lazarus. What do we do to combat this?
Hi, South Africa. I can always rely on South Africa to give me the hard question. Thanks very much. In South Africa, you always used to say, how's it? Now I understand you say, take it, which is slightly different. On a serious note, one of the things I think is important, and I know it's very, very difficult to do, and I've worked with members of the ANC, I've worked with members of the government in South Africa as well, is to at least try and break the stereotype. You know what, if we can't convince them always, at least confuse them. And I think that that's part of our role as well. One of the issues that you can do is certainly to be remarkably offended by the comparison. Why are you offended by it? Because it's an insult to the people who struggled against apartheid. In other words, yes, there may be problems, there may be issues, but if you're saying that what happened to the Palestinians is like apartheid, it is undermining what the blacks of South Africa were fighting against for their own liberation. In other words, you're undermining the very struggle against apartheid itself. There is no such discrimination as there was, excuse me for spelling it out to you, in South Africa, as there was under the apartheid regime here in Israel. We have Arab members of the Knesset, which never happened in apartheid. We have equal rights. We even have members of Knesset who openly are sympathetic with Hezbollah and are allowed to travel to Syria at the same time. So that type of democracy was never in the history of South Africa. And I think you can be, because I am personally offended when people use apartheid, because it really does undermine the struggle of black liberation in that country.
Hi. We have students here from, hi Neil, we have a few people here from York University, University of Toronto and Ryerson University, and we've been very involved in the last 6 or 7 months, particularly at York University, in a major struggle on campus which erupted after September the 11th and has kept up right until today. A lot of negative anti-Israel activity, certainly verging at times towards anti-Semitism, less vigorous at the University of Toronto, but certainly in the campus newspapers, equally vicious material.
The head of the student organization, Jewish student organization in Germany, will present the question. So please.
Okay, hi to all of the world. All of you have heard and know about the situation here in Germany and in Europe especially, the anti-Semitic situation. And the question is if there's any pressure on the European government or the European community to condemn this the act, and also like to get them in touch with the government to condemn the situation. Because I mean, for like in Germany, it's already it's normal that big politicians can condemn Israel and say things that are not convenient.
then obviously we have a day-to-day dialogue with the European governments, and I think that we have quite good relations with them, except those governments in which we have fascists or neo-fascists in a coalition or as government members, like in Austria. But generally speaking, the contacts are very good, and I guess that the problem of anti-Semitism is not really a problem of governments. It's a problem of what happens in the street. It's a problem of what happens in the public opinion. And this is the big danger, and this is the big problem, because it would be probably far easier if one could say, okay, the government is anti-Semitic, so let's do something against the government or with relation to the government. But the challenge is totally different, because anti-Semitism is out there, it's in the streets, it's in the campuses, it's in the universities, it's all over the place. And of course, if you ask me personally, as an Israeli, as a Zionist, I think that I know the answer to anti-Semitism. I think that I have in my hand the key to the fight against anti-Semitism, and this passes through coming to Israel, because this is the state of the Jewish people. But if you want to stay in the countries in which you live, you will have to understand that this is a problem that you will have to face, and you will have to face it on a daily basis. And fundamentally, it's true that given the events of the last year and a half, there has been more anti-Semitism. But I don't think that anti-Semitism was invented during the last year and a half. It has been there all the time, and it has found now a good pretext in order to go out and in order to express itself.